Just got to share the link.
Very cool. You putting the YouTube link out on Twitter?
Yeah, I just put it on Twitter, and it's on Reddit now.
Nice.
Sweet. Yeah. So I was just saying, I imagine G-America and new housing developments, possibly Pulte Homes, being kind of quite quite close relationship. There's by my house, well, somewhat near my house, there's a Pulte Homes development, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Not in the middle of nowhere. It's like close enough to the freeway, but it's, I don't know, it's a really nice part of town. Like they were able to do a huge development, all nice streets and everything, and then they have a big grocery store there and a little shopping center. And so sometimes I'll actually go further to go there just because it's a little bit nicer, even though it's out of the way. And so I don't know. I see a lot of overlap between Pulte Homes and possibly Bed Bath and Beyond G-America. So
yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it seems very likely that there's some sort of camaraderie and things that aren't publicly known yet, but we can speculate, and it's a lot of fun to do so.
Yeah, I was watching something a little while back about gentrification and how going across the United States, there was like the older houses, and then everything once a city kind of needs to be, the maintenance has to come in and start fixing stuff. They just like, I don't know, the housing value just kind of collapses and the city kind of collapses, and then they just start a new city. And that was kind of an interesting concept. But I think that coupling that with just now on a kind of a global scale, like is there an influx of people or not? And how many, I don't know, how many new houses can be supported? I know back in 2005, 2006, there was like a lot of people in my area just building houses. Like there was huge housing developments going up. And I remember my boss at the time, her boyfriend saying, "Oh yeah, we just, we're going to buy another house for investment." And I'm like, "And no one's going to live there, and you're just going to flip it in 6 months or something?" I'm like, "That doesn't really seem sustainable." But and it wasn't. 2008 came, but I think now there's still even more of an influx of people coming in, and there is a need for houses possibly. I mean, Pulte Homes makes like 30,000 a year, and there's definitely more than that coming in. So
wow, yeah, there's the housing market is very interesting. I'm not an expert there, but I'm interested to see what the research you've done. This looks really great.
Sweet. Yeah, and I'll put a link in if any other I do believe that there's going to be a lot of apes with a lot of money, and they're going to need houses, maybe second houses to rent out. I don't even know, but so all right. So let's see. Here's what are my qualifications? Not really anything. This is me when I was little. Me and my sister. It was kind of funny that it's actually my dad's business. He had a construction company, and we're building a chicken coop. So, yeah, I've come back and done a little bit of construction stuff here and there. Just kind of grown up around it. So I just want to say hi to, let's see, got Douglas, Dustin, SP, and MB. Nice. All right. So just looking at new homes versus old homes, because you know there a lot of people talk about like the housing bubble. There was a guy that came on to the PP show and was like, "Oh, the SPY is going up to 600 or whatever." Like, uh, you know, like, is there the dollar milkshake theory? Like, is the whole economy going to keep going up? Are we in a bubble? Um, just kind of had some thoughts about that. I mean, not like I'm investing a lot in other stocks other than Bed Bath and Beyond, uh, but I don't know. It is good to know what's like what to look for. What signs, what catalysts are we looking for? Whether they can be positive or negative catalysts in the broader market. Um, so just some of the things actually that I did have experience with as far as like old homes and new homes was uh, some different regulations. Regulations can cost more and whatnot, but also certain things like they didn't even know like lead paint, lead pipes, all that stuff until 1978. They didn't even actually the lead pipes they didn't really change that till 1987, and so there's still a lot of houses that have a lot of like lead things in there, and lead sticks onto your hemoglobin and messes with your ability to actually use oxygen and does all this damage. And not only that, but there's other things like radon. Like even nowadays, there's radioactive gas coming out of the ground, giving people lung cancer. People who don't even smoke or anything, getting lung cancer, and people have no idea and they don't even care. Like even in high radon areas, they, houses are built and they don't even have like that taken into account. So I actually, uh, for a short stint, I had my own business doing all that crappy stuff in there. That wasn't me. I did the bottom part, not the top part. But so it's like interesting that have like radon it comes from a decomposition of granite, and goes as it deteriorates, then creates this gas, and then it comes up through the ground. And so the newer houses actually like are like a vacuum. They like pull it straight out of the ground into your house, and then it stays there, and you breathe it in, it gives you cancer. And so a lot of the old houses, actually, this wasn't even an old house. This was probably less than 15 years old. And I had to like find some little tiny, spot to be able to go from the ground all the way up to the roof to vent it out. And so I cut this little hole in there, and that was like me in this. So I had to put that tube going all the the top, and then there's a fan at the bottom and whatnot. This actually is a different house, but it just shows that I had to make like a vacuum underneath the house because the house acts as a vacuum, but I'd make another, vacuum sealed type thing at the bottom to pull out all the radon. So there's all these houses don't even have stuff like that. Uh, Also, I was talking to my dad, and I know a lot of the people that in the construction business, and like some of the older houses just waste energy like crazy. Not that I'm super for the environment or anything, but if I could save 75% on my bills compared to like an or super old house or whatever, 50%, 25% with a new appliances, new building quality, even just new windows does quite a bit. Um,
Yeah, energy efficiency makes a ton of sense just economically because even if you do end up having to pay more for the house or get refreshed appliances and those type of upgrades, that translates into actually increases the value of the asset that is the house. More modern appliances, more home equity, better resale value. And so if you had to pay the energy company or those utility prices, that's just a pure operational expense. Whereas if you're fine, even if you have to finance something like new HVAC, windows, more energy efficient appliances, there's an asset behind that. It's just not. So you're able to reduce your operating expenses while growing or increasing the equity value.
Exactly, and that's either going to go into you're either just going to pay the energy company every month, or you're going to like store that as equity in the house that you could then extract later when you want to resell it, right? So I mean, for me, like even they had light bulbs and wiring differences that are more efficient. Older houses. I mean, especially when you're redoing something, kind of like that um, like to retrofit something to an old house is
It could be a disaster.
Yeah, and way more costly than just putting it in the right way, and I think that's why, like, my dad used to do custom houses, like, really nice custom houses. 2008 kinda messed that up, because all the people weren't out there building super nice custom houses anymore, but, I think that there's a economy of scale. I think that our economy is, like, past a time where it can afford to not use economy of scale, like, that includes for Bed Bath& and Beyond as far as, like, you know, every all these big brands working together to have one platform, and rather than everyone managing their own website and trying to do their own advertising to pull in people and all that stuff. There's so much redundancy in the market, and I think other all the companies that have all that redundancy will be struggling, and anyone and then so the people that will be able to succeed in this kind of maybe a little bit harsher environment, economic environment, will have to be using the economy of scale to have the efficiency needed to survive and thrive even.
Agreed.
Um, yeah, so I was going to show, well, I was just, that one neighborhood by my house, so gentrification, like you can, I think also people were, as far as houses, they're thinking, because like we're all kind of in a similar stage of life, maybe some of us have kids, maybe some of us don't, but most of us are kind of in at least somewhat of a similar stage of life. And so we think about like how much rent costs and whatnot. So for you, would you rather be in a place that was, uh, like more like, how much would you be willing to pay to be in the right area, or like what is it that you look for when you're, you know trying to move somewhere?
Ooh, well, it's going to be the answer to that question is going to be a lot different post MOASS, that's for sure. But what I've sort of valued in the past is just having the overall cost of living low. Because I've never really been interested in real estate investment. I've always been geared more towards initially cryptocurrency, and then picking stocks and playing with options. I would prefer to have equity in those more liquid states, and sort of be able to get similar returns or similar appreciation based on the assets that I'm picking. And so, for me, in a perfect world, I would like to have a bunch of money in a brokerage account and a cryptocurrency account to be able to use that to generate income. And if you're able to generate enough income, you can, I could use that, put some down payment on something, finance, either get a condo or a house somewhere, be able to take care of the mortgage, or even be able to just lease something wherever I'd want to be and have some flexibility and mobility. But that's me personally.
It's like, what does like flexibility look like to you? Like, is it like being close to an airport, being close to a freeway, being close to, like, I mean, like for, this last like 3 weeks I've been traveling a lot, and man, I was in Atlanta, and I just had zero desire to go around and explore the city. Like, so I don't know how many, like, whether people are different, whether that's like our generation doesn't really, I don't know, like, oh, hey, let's go to the mall and just walk around. I'm not sure what other people kind of feel as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think part of that might just be like, that it's always the more cost effective decision to not go out explore and not try new things. And we're having to deal with limitations on resources. Like, we don't have unlimited resources. So I can definitely, I definitely make similar decisions at times. But in terms of what flexibility, sort of freedom looks like to me, would just be, or where I would desire in terms of living place. Like, I do enjoy going to see new cities, kind of experiencing whatever is special in that area, new cities, new countries. I've not traveled internationally very much, but I do enjoy sort of zipping around the country. And I get a lot out of just, I really like just being in hotels, honestly. Like having the freedom and flexibility to just grab a bag with grab a bag with some clothes, hop into an airport, land in a city where you can take public transportation right downtown, have a hotel there, experience the city, get back on an airplane, and kind of go wherever you want. That would be that's it for me. But you need to have a home base too. So for home base, I think having some land somewhere close to home, and where family is, I think that's important. You got to have a place where you know You got to have a place to roost.
Yeah. I have a friend that like right after high school, like he started working a lot and then he got a house. It was kind of like a Pulte home, but I mean it wasn't as good in my opinion, but similar kind of area where it's just like on the outskirts of like regular town. It's just like right there, kind of as town expands. And Sacramento is a place I know more about than other places. And actually, let's see. Maybe actually, oh yeah. So this is Sacramento, and so there's Pulte Homes right here, which is like you can see there's not a lot of roads, but like it's actually really close to Highway 50, and then there's Highway 80, and so they find kind of these areas where they can expand, and the land's cheap enough, but also close enough. It's like the whole idea of like Highway 65 and whatnot wasn't really that big until it started being developed, and now this is the new. Like this actually kind of killed downtown Sacramento. It became like the new city center, and I think that that's kind of why Pulte Homes could be kind of such a big deal is that like there's a lot of I don't know. I mean, there's certain good things about being in the middle of town, but these are all like I guess you'd say nicer areas of town. I'd kind of highlight this as like the Folsom area because there's a lake, a really nice lake that you can go to and whatnot. Uh, and then there's Roseville. And it's interesting that the other day on the PP show, when I was at a local BBBY and Bed Bath and Beyond, supposedly one of these, the BBBY here is actually going to be staying open. I think. Well, it was as it on the second asset sales, it wasn't on the list. So unless they did something since then, I guess we'll see. But there was a Bed Bath and Beyond here in Sacramento, and it closed because it just kind of is too dangerous, and people, I don't know, kind of the whole dynamics down there changed, and so people, if they want to go shopping, they just go to Roseville, and so that's kind of a cool thing about getting a home is like you can see that they're guessing where the next big place is going to be, and it's going to pull people towards there, and it will be the new center of town. So that is something that adds value, and they're the ones that are doing. I mean, if you're building 30,000 houses a year, and dozens and dozens in one development at a time, you do your market research to figure out where those good areas are, and I'm kind of impressed with the areas they picked. I mean, I think picking one over here would be nice too. That's I don't know, side of town I like most, but these areas, I mean, people want to be near an airport or something. There's actually a private airport in this area. But yeah, so let's see. Any thoughts? Sorry, I'm.
Well, I'm trying to wrap. I maybe don't see the strength and the correlation necessarily between like Pulte Homes and they're picking develop like sites to develop, and build some of those 30,000 homes they're building every year, in Bed Bath and Beyond. So help me understand what you think the
Oh yeah,
correlation there
so
is.
just with those housing developments, usually you'll see them. They'll pick an area that they can buy a lot of land cheap, and they'll the streets and everything is like lined up good, but then they'll have a shopping center in there. And so what I'm imagining is that part of the appeal that's they're just guessing what the future is going to be. So it's like, okay, say there's a big Kroger, kind of like Fred Meyer's, if anyone's been to a Fred Meyer's, where it has like everything in there, that there's going to be just one of those that might even have like building it from scratch, where they could have maybe not just spots for big shipping trucks to come in and drop off product, but also have efficient, like a drive-through type thing, or even um, like a drive-through for rideshare people that are dropping off items, so that like the whole way of doing it's kind of like my dad was saying when he was my age, there wasn't drive-throughs. That's why you have Sonics and all these things. Is people that was like as modern as they got. Is like, okay, fine, we'll deliver it in your car. but like the thought of like, okay, we'll actually do a drive-through, and a lot of places aren't really, say you want real estate in a certain area to do a restaurant, they can't even, there's no way to even fit in a drive-through because they just didn't think about that ahead of time. And so I think that the whole way of doing life is going to be different. And you know, I mean, that's something that I don't know if it's CVS or Rite Aid started doing, but they started doing a drive-through, you know, and not like I go there a lot, so I don't know how beneficial that is. But actually, now that I think about it, I was in Mexico a while back with some friends, and they're from there, and there was this like a drive-through like convenience store thing, and they picked up some drinks and whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that is like I don't know that a lot of people want to just like park their car and then like go in a store, come back out, go drive to another store, park, you know. I think that the idea of like either having a drive through or also just like you park once and everything is inside that store, and or just get shipped to your house. I think those are going to be like kind of the way people do things instead of the current status quo.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you know, my vision for what Gmerica Teddy could be is sort of just a revital, like a Web3 enabled mall experience, because malls all over the country are, the real estate's. I think we've all, and wherever we live, seen that mall you went to as a teenager, walk to go to the food court, maybe across from the high school we went to. It's shuttered up and the businesses are closing, and they're trying to figure out what to do with that real estate. And it might, you know it may not we may not need the same type of footprint in sort of this next generation of malls, because the function that the mall serves is to sort of be that marketplace that you can walk through, but they also have to be they have to have storage for everything locally. Like, you can't just have a single item in inventory on sale within a store. You have to have multiples of that single item, because the commerce model is one where people have to walk in, buy that item, and walk out of the store with it. I really kind of imagine what sort of a next generation shopping experience be. There's something walking into the store like a Gmerica, like a Teddy, and there's the different booths, like maybe a GameStop booth, the home goods, all these, potentially food. But for a lot of the consumer items, like home goods and games and things like that, that this venue would provide an opportunity for you to experience that item in some way or another, and then have a way of having that item be shipped to your home, like just, and probably a fully cashless system as well, because that seems to be the way that we're going. Hopefully not with a CBDC type deal, but yeah, I can see that sort of being how all this pans out. I'd be very pleased to see that.
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing. If you had, like the instead of having to walk through an entire mall and whatnot, to have it more compact, because like you said, they wouldn't have to have so many of each item, right? Like if it was just like you're there, you say, hey, I want this, and either you know it's either delivered to your house, or then they just bundle it all up for you or whatnot. That just I guess the shopping experience could be like a smaller location could have a lot more items, and that would cost them less money. And that way, say the items were being shipped out far away or within the store, that they wouldn't have to keep moving it around. Instead of like, oh, we this store location bought all these items and now we're not selling them, so now we have to ship them back. It's like they just be like micro distribution centers might be kind of uh, like a future of things where like ABC was saying, 80% of the sales are from 20% of the items, the most hot items.
Yeah.
So you'd have in those micro distribution centers, you'd have all those items, and then pretty easily be able to ship the rest from wherever you wanted pretty quickly.
Yeah, it would save a ton on lease expenses too, because if you're having to facilitate the customer experience in person on site, and then also in that same location have to have warehousing capabilities, you need twice as much. Maybe not twice as much, but you need significantly more storage. And then in a mall concept, if there's if it's different types of businesses and they don't have a shared logistics system, like in a mall, Build a Bear and Forever 21, they don't have the same inventory management practices. They don't operate off of like an underlying list of SKUs. There's no standardization between the operations for the different kiosks in a mall type experience. So there's added inefficiency there, and with added inefficiency, it just takes up more and more space. So where these malls are generally is in really high rent, high value areas that get a lot of foot traffic, have a lot of people living around them, higher home prices generally. So if you can deliver that same mall type experience, but do so in more of a sort of a trade show, or like as a means of showcasing your best products, and all the kiosks within that store are able to sort of modularly plug into like an underlying logistical infrastructure, like you can just focus on providing a good customer experience, getting a lot done with a small volume of demo items that and the demo item is used for consumers to touch, feel, play with, experience, then make that decision. And when you make the purchase order, it can come from anywhere else. So a warehouse in a facility where there's less people that are living, it's less expensive. Land is less expensive, labor is less expensive potentially, and just have that be something that can be standardized on across the country and just plug into short time frame shipping.
Yeah, I was just thinking back of when I went to the Fred Meyer's. They had a little. It looked like a. I mean, they did. Fred Meyer's is owned by Kroger and Bed Bath and Beyond did have a deal. So I'm not sure exactly how that deal works, you know. But I mean, they had like displays and whatnot, and there in the store, so it was
I,
very
th-
compact. Like it was like not like a whole Bed Bath and Beyond, but like enough of it to where you could actually like see and touch and feel things. And
I
then
think the Kroger deal wasn't that there was on the Kroger website, like you could do your grocery shopping, but it was basically advertising to Kroger customers that like if you have needs for home goods, we don't, we have a limited amount of cleaning supplies and general sort of high volume sort of standard home goods. But if you want to get like a desk or a chair or a lamp, you're not going to find those at Kroger. But I think they were just advertising Bed Bath and Beyond, like advertising sort of a cross launched uh, marketing campaign to push people towards Bed Bath and Beyond's website, and then um, Bed Bath and Beyond was basically paying Kroger for those leads. I'm not exactly sure how that works, and it's been a while since that was. You brought this up the other day, and it has been probably 6 months, 9 months since anyone's really talked about that partnership. But that was my understanding of it at the time.
yeah, and Kroger just bought Albertsons, and so I think that they wanted to give the same features as they would at these bigger super centers, to all the customers. Say like, hey, even if you're not in this area and we haven't like done this yet, you could still benefit from what we're planning on doing, maybe, if that's the case. But I think that one of the efficiencies is like, say you only need like one rep or whatever for the Bed Bath and Beyond section, you wouldn't need a cashier, you wouldn't need, because all that would be through the platform, which is the grocery store. It's already there, so you wouldn't need your own security, you wouldn't need, like all the things that would go along with it. You just have, like one person or whatever that's managing the section. They're an expert. Like when I bought my wife's ring, I don't know, we went in there and they had a nice selection, but ultimately we were going through, going through books and books, and she's like, oh, you want one that's like this, but like in between this one and this one. Okay. And then we found it, because there's so many different options when you can buy it, but having an expert, and luckily she was a family friend too. So got the exact ring, and it worked out great. So.
Good. Well, hey, tell me about these tract homes versus custom built
Oh
homes. I
yeah.
don't know anything about tract homes.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just so with a custom home, that's what my dad used to do, and they typically don't do that many homes at the same time because there's not anything really in common. Tract home is more like they have like a certain amount of like layouts. So they have like 6 different types of houses, but all of them have a lot of things in common because the same sort of designers and whatnot built them, and so you can
Oh,
just
okay. So the tract homes, that's what Pulte Homes does.
yeah. Yeah,
So
and
like a developer will go in, sort of buy a parcel of land, build the whole neighborhood up, and there's some slight variance between the homes, but the neighborhood has a common, has a lot of common designs.
yeah. So
Okay.
however many floor plans they have, I'm not really sure how many Pulte does because like track homes, there's different like qualities of it, and I think that Pulte is one of the top qualities of a track home. But I think that just the costs of doing things custom is kind of like the Model T, Ford mentality. When you actually streamline it, you can bring the cost down quite a bit, and so you can have because like say you're just building one house, to get like a big old tractor out there to get like because you have to like make the sewage or all that different stuff, like that can just be like so cost so much money, whereas like it doesn't take that much more time once you get the tractor there to just do 20 houses instead of just do it for one house. And so they can actually bring down the cost of a lot of those things quite a bit. And not only that, but they can do it right and make sure it all works together, because sometimes when you're like, okay, I bought this property, I want to like, well, you have to like try and fit into the sewage system and all that stuff that's already there. So sometimes there's like weird ways you have to go about that. Whereas when they plan it all out from the beginning, it all works the way it's supposed to, optimally. And yeah, so they can end up doing more houses faster, which is awesome. And I don't know that like, I mean, some people might want a custom house, but it also takes like a long time. Uh, so And I don't know, it also depends on, like, where the house is, I mean, if it's exactly where you want it or whatnot. I mean, for me, I do I'm conflicted. I do like having property, but, like, growing up, we didn't really have fast internet. We didn't have we still barely have DSL. I mean, watching a 1080p video is, like, about as much as my parents', internet can do. So, I'm more in the city now, which is a lot more convenient to have faster internet and whatnot. But the other thing is that each one of the homes, they I mean, since they're brand new, I actually did roofing for a summer. Um,
Whew,
yeah, roofing, definitely not
that's
the.
hard work.
I wouldn't wish that even on my worst enemies. Like that was, especially during the summer. Oh man, but I think my fingertips are still like burnt from like, like anyway, because Sacramento can get up to like 100 is like 112 degrees, a few days, and you're there on a black roof with melting tar and stuff. It was not fun, but a roof lasts 25 years, then you have to redo it, and costs 10 grand or so or whatever. So having knowing and the quality of the roof, like the new technology and whatnot, it makes it last longer and last better. So those like the Pulte homes, for example, have like a 10-year warranty, limited warranty. And since they have a big enough company, there's probably people around that can respond pretty quickly to different things. I was actually shocked to find that the Pulte homes here in Sacramento were like 600 to 800,000. I don't know if that's like a lot for other people in other areas, but in this kind of in Sacramento, that's actually pretty good. So I was not guessing that. Um,
What's that for, like a 2,500 square foot house roughly?
um, yeah, I mean, I actually didn't go into the square footage, but yeah, it looked about like a 2,500
Yeah,
square
just like
foot
a,
house or
yeah,
something.
like 4 or 5 bedrooms, something like that. Yeah, whatever.
Probably. Yeah. No, I mean, I'll have to look through it. Um, yeah, I mean, some of them look pretty good. This background actually is a Pulte home. I Yeah, and also, I think the fact that hopefully if Bill Pulte can, either get someone on the board of directors or whatnot, like a lot of them, you know, because I don't know, they have like a monopoly essentially, like the big home builders. They don't really have to. You can either like do advertising and get expensive lawyers, or try to like do customer delight. And so I imagine the future of Pulte Homes, if Bill Pulte gets, um, I don't know, influence in that company, more influence in that company, that'd be pretty awesome. So I was thinking about as the housing bubble and whether or not like right now is a time, one to either A, invest in Pulte Homes, or B, to buy a home. And it was kind of interesting once I mapped out, this is Pulte Homes in blue, and DR Horton, which is another big home builder, in yellow. And basically, like after it seems like after the stock market goes up, well, then people buy houses. That seemed to be kind of like a reoccurring theme. And so now that the stock market's going up, then that means when people take profits, they usually put into a house. So there's that. I mean, currently, right now, it's interesting that they're both going up at the same time. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, whether that means it's a bubble or whether that means that kind of just the economy is in a different state than it was. Um, One is like people keep talking about like the dollar milkshake and whatnot, but I think one thing that's kind of on a global scale more influential than necessarily like the direct dollar milkshake theory is just how many people come to America because it's the most stable, or one of the most stable countries. There's been a lot of people leaving a lot of countries. I don't want to name any names, but certain events, just like masses of people, and the U.S. is one of those places where they know, like, yes, if it's fine, I might pay a lot of taxes or whatever, but it will be a safer place to live and to park their money. And you can see like how many people immigrate, and it's probably just going to keep going up. And
Yeah, likely.
yeah, like there's so like what could like disrupt this influx, like a lot of in the history of war and whatnot, there's like something called like a brain bleed where whatever location has the most stability, like, or they, I guess it could go either way. You could just, like Germany would, kidnap scientists and whatnot, but like, even when you have a good location, a lot of the people that have they're smart or have good skills, like they'll come to the best location rather than stay in their home country. And so it kind of bleeds the poorer countries of their best people. And so it makes them kind of the rich countries stay rich and the poor countries stay poor. And even if they're not like doing it on purpose, it just is kind of how it goes. I mean, for example, if say you're going to race motocross, right? Like you can't really make very much money, if any, racing motocross anywhere but the United States. So all the good motocross player racers from all around the world, they all come to the United States. And I'm sure that that sort of effect happens uh, in like every sector, you know, even, as far as making chips, right? Like the Taiwan Semiconductor Company, the US was like, hey, we'll give you a portion of, I can't remember if it was Texas or Arizona or New Mexico, one of those two or one of those three. But they're like, yeah, we'll give you land, we'll fund it, whatever you want, And so who knows whether that goes through or not. But it would be kind of appealing, I'm sure, for quite a few people there to be like, well, would I rather be here in this current situation or working in, Texas or something? So what could disrupt it, I guess, to look out for is the BRICS nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America, or South Africa. Oh dang. um, like they're trying to put a basket of currencies that will challenge the U.S. dollar, and they've gotten the attention and somewhat of the cooperation of a lot of the oil companies, a lot of the oil countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. So that's a pretty big deal. But we still have seen from all those countries quite an influx still of people, like Singapore, like the housing there has been going up just because a lot of people have been moving, from China to Singapore. I think like one thing that America has is just the fact that we're a huge country as far as geographically, and we have an ocean, separating us from a lot that when you look at like why Germany started World War I and World War II, it was that they were squashed between all these big countries, empires really, and it was that either they conquered or they were conquered. So they choose to try and conquer. And I kind of was thinking like what you can like my wife studied Middle Eastern studies, um, and so that's been and I just like history in general, but like you'll see like this sort of formula of like the power of a country is like their technology, their geography, their unity, their infrastructure, and then you have to like compare that to their enemies, technology, geography, unity, infrastructure, and then multiply that times proximity, resentment, catalysts, and allies. And then also I was going to add on opportunities. And so I think that when you look at a lot of the countries, even Western countries, that there's a lot of resentment and a really close proximity and a lot of catalysts and who knows like what allies, so I think that there's that I mean, we have two chill neighbors. We have Mexico and we got Canada, and so I think that kind of like creates a buffer zone that preserves like the value of the housing market and just our economy in the United States. So I wonder to what degree that's going to like keep our economy growing. I mean, if you look at just like this geographic size, like just one of our states is like big as most of Europe. So like they're all pretty packed in there, and there's a long history of quite a bit of resentments and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I guess if is the question, if the question is being asked, like, is investing in or just investing in homes in the United States of America a good idea? I think history would tell us that the answer is a resounding yes.
Yeah.
Like even if you have, especially if it's not for investment purposes, like you're trying to get a bunch of homes and lever yourself up and hope that renters are able to pay your second, third, fifth, 15th mortgages, right? If it's a primary if it's a primary residence, you need a place to live, and it's difficult for you to lose money over a long enough time span with something like a house. And over that time, you're building up equity instead of uh, just throwing that all away on rent. Renting isn't a terrible situation to be in either, depending on like your life circumstances. It's not like you buy a house and the American dream is achieved. It's not exactly how it works. You're putting most homes aren't made with cash purchases. You're putting up some small percentage of the home value up front and then mortgaging the rest. And then throughout the duration of that mortgage, you'll have to get a new HVAC unit, new roof. Just once you're a homeowner, those things are your responsibility and those expenses add up. So there's definitely costs above and beyond just your mortgage to facilitate, your maintenance of that asset. But let's say you bought a house in 2008, the day before, uh, you know, Bear, around the same times that Jim Cramer was saying to buy Bear Stearns stock. Like even if you had bought a house then, if you're still living in that same home now and able to carry the mortgage that you have at that elevated price, like you'd still be, 15 years later in a pretty good position. Would have seen, some appreciation over that time. Obviously it would have taken you 10 or 15 years to get back to get to that state. So it's not it wouldn't have been a great investment necessarily, but it would have provided you with, with shelter and stability throughout that duration as well.
Yeah, and that actually made me think like a lot of people in my area why I think it was so easy to kind of see the 2008 thing. I didn't know at that time anything about what was actually going to make it crash, but I knew that there was a lot that was unsustainable, and one part of that was like what percentage of each person's like income in my area at least was going towards, their mortgage. And it was like a lot. I mean, there's so many people that are so house poor, they'd literally be driving a crappy car, eating freaking bologna sandwiches or whatever, like, and like in this like house that was just so expensive. And like you were saying, then it's like, say your air conditioning goes out, say whatever happens, there's all these costs that accrue. I mean, even to heat and cool a house is really expensive. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so I think a lot of people kind of like they're like, oh, what can I afford? What's the best thing I can afford? And they max that out. And it's like, you're gonna, you got to leave pretty big buffer because it's just not like you'll lose it all if, suddenly you can't make your payments because, whatever economic thing happens, or just the cost, just, your property taxes, how much your property taxes, how much is, I mean, that's one kind of good and bad thing about, typically the track homes and those new developments that have an HOA. So you do have to pay your HOA, and it both like helps you preserve the value of your home because everyone's held to a higher standard, but also can be kind of annoying if you want to have friends, park out on the street or whatever the HOA rules are. Um, yeah.
One thing with home values also, sort of like the trend over a very long period of time, is it used to, back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, probably less so the 70s, but it used to be, mortgages used to be fairly uncommon. Like it wasn't, at least compared to where we are today, where it is at, where mortgages are absolutely the standard. But what didn't exist were were these like 20-year and 30-year mortgages. They didn't even exist back then. You'd put a significant amount of your money down to buy a house, you'd scrimp and you'd save. But this is back when the dollar was backed by gold, and when you're working for a wage, you're earning gold, so your money has real value. And how much gold does it take to buy a piece of land? Like, I think a lot of people listening here may have a father or a grandfather. They have a story of like, oh yeah, I bought this house for $25,000 back in 1962, and it was in a good area, and now it's worth $1 million, $2 million. And that's there's a couple factors that there's a lot of factors that have resulted in that, but inflation being one, but also the access to financial products to be able to finance houses. That would be mortgages. The nature of that product has changed a lot over time as well, because it used to be you put, I don't know, 10, 20, 30% down on a house and finance the rest, but you'd only finance it for 5 or 10 years. And that was the norm. And then some time passes, and all of a sudden you're putting maybe a smaller percentage down on the home, and you're borrowing for a longer period of time, maybe 10 or 15 years. And that trend has just continued to where we are today, where uh, a lot of people are buying homes. Like if you're a first time home buyer and you're using the FHA program, you're coming up with 7%, roughly 7%. That includes closing costs, so pay the bankers, attorneys, everything that go into closing the house. So you're coming up with 7% up front, and then getting a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and having to manage that product. And that is now like the standard for first time home buyers. So mortgaging 30 years of your life, and just having a 30-year amortization table in order to be able to afford a place to live. But the access to be able to finance more time in a mortgage is what, along with inflation, and inflation is largely the result of the debasement of our currency, which sort of didn't exactly start in like 1971, but that's when we were officially off of the gold standard, where we took the hard money that backed the value of our paper bills. It was that decoupling event, and that's just allowed for inflation. And we've been seeing a lot of that in these past few years. So you've got inflation going on, access to more funds to be able to pay someone for their old house. And I think what's going to, me personally, what I think is going to keep the value of the value of homes from crashing as bad as maybe we saw back in 2008, is I think we're just going to ride out these interest rates, which are pretty high right now. I don't see them going down for a while. I'm not an expert. Interest rates fell for 40 years straight, from like 15% in the 70s down to right at zero just a couple of years ago. Now we're back around 5%. Like, that's a long trend of going from high to low. And now that we started going from low to high, I don't think a 40-year trend is going to be offset by a 3-year trend. I think it's going to be a little longer than that. But in order to make homes affordable, I think they're going to do things like maybe like subsidized mortgages at a lower interest rate, but unlock a new class of mortgages where, the mortgage, in a couple of years, it may be that the standard duration of a mortgage is now 35 or 40 years instead of just 30, because that's just that's just the two long-term trends that I just referenced are, the collapsing interest rates over the past 40 years, um, and the also the trend of the average duration of the mortgage that home buyers need to use to be able to afford to have a place to live, going from maybe being a 5 or 10 year average to damn near a 30-year average today.
That kind of made me think, actually, like the idea of expanding the timeline of the loan is that I don't know I don't know, say the surveillance state, but like this, the ability for the government to actually monitor things, and like it would make it easier for them to manage longer, like, or even just private businesses, whoever, to manage longer loans. I know that, like in China, they spend a huge percentage of their income on their house, and yeah, that would that could get interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's a banker's dream. I listen. There's a sales motivational speaker that I've listened to a lot in years past, named Grant Cardone, and his position is that like the American dream of owning a house was really a sales tactic created by banks to get everybody invested into this shared idea that you know their success in life is defined by how much carpeted floor space they have at home, how big their house is, really selling more home or getting people to want to buy more home than they really need. And that and they created mortgages. They didn't create mortgages, they've been around for a long time, but sort of through regulatory capture, the mortgage market, it's not a free market system. It's totally, I think regulatory capture has sort of taken over that market. The amount of paperwork and underwriting approvals and how the credit system works into that, and there's just all sorts of overregulation, in my opinion, and overcomplication in just being able to get access to home ownership, and that's by design to have banks have a claim on your earning potential for a greater percentage of your life. That's their objective. It's the business model of a bank is to facilitate loans and be able to call on them if need be, and that's what banks do. They create money by creating debt.
And that's yeah, I read a book. It was The Origin of Political Order, I think, something like that. And it just talks about rent seeking. The government, that's what it does, is it's like you pay it rent, and then it offers you protection, or whatever services. And I think that they're kind of more deeply going into that everything's going to be a rent, where you don't own anything, but you're happy, I guess. uh like the iPhones, right? Like you can just pay a certain fee, so you're renting your iPhone, but then you just get automatically upgraded every year. So it just seems like everyone is going for a service, like a subscription service, that way they all know exactly how much they're getting. And we're stuck in this cycle where you couldn't just amass a certain amount of wealth or something and then just be separate from the government or from big business, that you are stuck into this perpetual system that you have to keep playing along with.
Yep, that's Klaus Schwab's dream. That's for sure.
And that's like, I'm kind of conflicted about it, because like his idea of like the 15-minute city, like, I mean, in some ways it would be very practical, right? Like if you had a G-America store and then a whole housing development around it, like, I mean, you wouldn't need to be, you know, I mean, a lot would be right there. But then again, like, what are they going to do once people are stuck into that kind of system? Like you said, you like to travel around and be in a hotel and then, do all that stuff. So I don't know. It's going to,
Yeah, I don't necessarily hate the idea of a 15-minute city and having it be, I don't hate that idea, but I don't want to lose my freedom of mobility.
yeah.
Like I don't want to I don't want to know that I'm not able to like go beyond 20 blocks in that direction. Like just that just seems crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I like the idea. I just don't want or Schwab doing it, or whatever, Klaus Schwab doing it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ideas of like the sort of the central planners, they're not they're not all objectively terrible ideas. I think the problem is that there's just terrible people trying to facilitate these plans, and and nobody does anything, uh, for lack of self interest. Like you're not. And Pulte said this on the PP show. I don't know, a couple weeks back, was that yes, he's a philanthropist. He enjoys giving money away, but he does it for selfish reasons. And he acknowledges that, which I admire, and just
Yeah.
that ability to, he's not grandstanding saying, "Hey, look how great of a person I am." He's just in a position where he's able to kind of, uh, fulfill his selfish desire to feel good as a person that I think we all have, and in some way or another, he's able to do that by sharing his wealth, right? So he's not just saying like, I'm the best person ever. Look at how all the great works that I do. He's like, like I'm selfish and I'm choosing to be selfish by, you know, by sharing what I have with other people, and I get a lot out of that. And then like ABC had the conversation, or ABC contributed to that conversation in saying that giving is better than receiving. Right? It feels better to give and know that what you've given is truly appreciated by the recipient than it is like if you've already got the things that you need to get some fancy trinket from someone. They're like, oh yeah, that's nice, that's cool, but it really feels good to be able to give some of what you have to somebody that's in need. You get a lot more out of that.
And for me, I kind of realized a while back that you can't really tell if someone's actually nice, but you can tell whether they're smart. And a smart person is gonna probably be nice because it's in the long term gonna be better. That just the fact that Pulte, you know, that he sees that there's a win-win situation available, which is the same one that I see available, that a win-win is possible. Whereas like the status quo in the general market it was a win-lose situation, that there was a zero-sum game, and that what by whatever means necessary, they're going to extract as much wealth from the system. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll be CEO for a few years. I'll get $27 million or whatever, 20 like per year, and then I'll just bag that. And then once they kick me out, fine. At least I got 3 or 4 years worth of making inexorbitant amounts of money. And I think that like the idea that it's like, well, why don't we at least try to make it a win-win situation and see how far customer delight can support this system, instead of it being this rapidly cycling thing where everyone pillages and then it collapses, and pillage and collapse and pillage and collapse. That with the idea of, I mean, especially through social media, customer delight is a lot more viable, right? Like it's like all it takes is like you can tell the entire world how you feel about something, in minutes. And so I think that it's stupid and selfish, the fact that other people haven't been doing the customer delight way, you know. And it's even more sad that it's stupid. Like it's like, guys, like, why not make this sustainable? Why, like, you totally can, and it would actually work better.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a way to sort of solve some of the world's bigger problems and do so sustainably. It's just the problem is that the central planners are. I think we can all clearly see that the plans that they're trying to implement have a clear bias towards self interest towards them, and their goal is to sort of deliver this kind of own nothing and be happy type mentality, and have us, and someone in the chat mentioned earlier, it's sort of like a subscription service for everything, uh, to be able to profit off, if for those central planners to be able to profit off of the fact that we are having to subscribe to for everything that we need to live, breathe, eat, and experience life, but we don't own anything, whereas they still maintain control of their vast estates, vast swaths of land, the ability to travel internationally, all of those things, and that be funded by the serfdom of everybody else. And that's, I believe that really the big problem. I don't know. I have a lot of hope in sort of artificial intelligence and just the continued expanse of technology in this. I may be naive in that. I think we've all watched the Terminator and iRobot and all that stuff, but I think the biggest problem is that there's a conflict of interest when you have one set of humans governing over another set of humans, because they're going to implement rules, regulations, and just a system that's going to benefit them at the cost of the people that they are ruling over. So if there could be a little bit more transparency and governance provided by the technology that's available today, and that's what we build on, and we sort of eliminate that conflict of interest of having humans always have to govern over other humans. It's a little bit off topic for this, just kind of
No, actually, it's not. We're gonna get there.
okay, yeah, great. Like it's sort of a bit of maybe naive hope and philosophy, but I do have a lot of hope that that's the future that we could live in, and that's the future I'd prefer to live in, instead of one where it's just a continuation of um, consolidation of power and a very small subsection of humanity that owns more and more, and everyone else is left to have to fend for the scraps. There's abundance on this planet, and the you know I think one of the I think I'll just leave it at that. There's abundance here, and we've got the technology and the means of distributing goods. We have the logistics, we have the software, we have the you know the right tools now that just need to be implemented and managed in such a way where more people are able to benefit from it. And I don't have a problem with the people that build and maintain that system from profiting and being and earning wealth off of it, but I don't want to see it as a means of just continuing to siphon off the many for the benefit of the few.
Yeah, the tragedy of the commons, which for anyone who doesn't know, there's like anytime there's like a shared property, like say there's a pond with fish in it, um, as soon as you make it a shared resource, someone's gonna inevitably fish it to a point where it goes extinct. And but I think that's one of the reasons I really like this community is that we all have vision and to see the future and imagine a place where it could be more of a win-win situation. Because like you're saying, like we have a lot of resources, like the world's a big place, and you know there's all this potential locked up in just this kind of selfish system the way it's been set up. And I'm excited for a big kind of change in that respect.
Yeah, that's one of the things that gives me the most hope in my Bobby investment, and just sort of the meme stocks. I know we hate that term, but it's just GameStop, Bed Bath and Beyond, probably some others as well. But my hope is that it really is the idiosyncratic risk and that we're holding on to. And I kind of see the rise in the market, and everyone's talking about this recent bull run on the news and how well the markets are doing right now. I kind of see that as a need to inflate the value of their collateral to continue to deal with this idiosyncratic risk. And I'm patient. I'll continue to be patient, and I'm hopeful that this is truly a redistribution of wealth type of event from the few to the many, and then see what happens when the world has a lot more just good normal people that come from like just sort of humble family origins, that all of a sudden have a means to take care of themselves and those around them. And I think the world would be better suited if there was just a greater decentralization of resources and authority for people to manage their own lives, and obviously do so in a lawful and ethical way. But I think that's a better world than where everybody's starved for resources and having to work. I want to work because I want to work. I don't want to work because I have to, because if I don't, bills don't get paid and my life falls apart, right? I think the world would be a better place if people are able to choose the work that they want to do and take care of those around them, instead of be dependent on the central planners for handouts. And if you don't behave, you don't get your handouts.
And that's one thing, it's not just the fact that Pulte came on the show to like kind of validate our investment and say like you guys aren't crazy, right? Like I really like the show. You guys are going places, and potentially, Ryan Cohen is active in this situation, which that meant a lot to me just as far as a confirmation, because I'm kind of all in as far as my life. Like my net assets is almost exclusively just my Bed Bath and Beyond that's all I have to my name really. But um, you know, also just the idea that as a person that potentially has influence in something like Pulte Homes, that's like, hey, like I want to engage with my investors and potential clients, right? And it's like, I imagine that literally MOASS happens, and he's like, hey, where would you guys want a housing development, and what kind of things would you want, right?
Yeah,
Because
you'd have more customers, right? Because ultimately, if you just keep on, you can only you can't bleed a stone, right? And we're being squeezed on every side of our lives. Like prices on everything are crazy. I bought a can of sunscreen yesterday. It was just like a small little can of sunscreen, like kids sunscreen, and it was $12. I couldn't believe it. It's just like I know that should not be $12. I couldn't believe it, but I still needed it. I had to buy it, and it's $12, like whatever. But it's it's cumulative. Like when everything is getting expensive like that, you are left with so much less at the end of the month, and if you need that next paycheck. It's so I mean, there's just that with taxes going up, just with everything increasing in price. If your salary's not going, the past couple of years, if your salary hasn't gone up 10 or 20% a year, you're just left with less purchasing power now than you were in 2019.
yeah, it's like yeah, I mean, I think that's just the model, as you could that currently they're doing is that you just extract until you can't extract anymore. Not like I'm against like fracking or something, but like the idea was like, oh, we ran out of oil. I know there's ways to like pull more oil out. Like um, yeah, like I don't know, I just think about that. It's like, whereas like, who are they when they're in the previous home builders, and what they're doing right now? Like, who are they asking when they decide like where they're going to do things, and like we we've seen the emergence of several different types of technology. One is like crowdfunding, that you can kind of, instead of just creating a product and then trying to sell it to people, whether they need it or not, it's like, well, here's a potential product. What's the interest in that product? So I'm like seeing all these technologies that, in my opinion, like have a lot of potential to create not just better efficiency, but like it be a win-win situation. And I'm excited for that potential to be leveraged on a bigger scale, through some kind of platform. I mean, like the idea of a blockchain voting and whatnot is really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Michael, are there other slides in this presentation? I know we've just
Oh,
been
yeah,
hanging out
sorry.
here.
I don't know. This is so kind of also talking about the world. This is kind of an interesting. I just made so the blue is every time where the home market. I mean, the Pulte Group one, it kind of has been going up with regular market. I mean, once I think if Bill gets onto the board, I think that it will potentially grow faster than the rest of just the regular home market because of the customer delight aspect of that. But as of right now, it's still all the kind of big DR Horton and those other ones just look pretty similar. So I kind of went through to say like, what's the relationship between the home market and the dollar index, or or just the general stock market like the SPY. And because it's like, well, to try and know the future, if you actually look at the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan, that tells kind of an interesting story, like when one goes up and the other ones go down. So the red is when the Chinese yuan goes down, and so the purple would then be where the US housing market's going up, but the Chinese yuan is going down. And so it was like interesting that there wasn't really a connection until 2005, when there was a Russia China military exercise, the first joint exercise between them. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And so it's so then um, so then you look like it went down, the value of the yuan went down and down until it started going up when Russia took Crimea. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then the value of the yuan went down um, with the Xinjiang kind of controversy. And then I actually didn't have time to see what caused it to go back up, but then it went down again with COVID, but then it went back up again once Russia invaded Ukraine. And so it's just been, I think that as far as guessing the long-term housing market and stock market in general, the situation between, the West and the East, I guess, would have to be factored into being able to guess that.
Yeah, it's an interesting analysis.
Yeah. Um, oh yeah. So just the customer July difference. I don't know. I think it'd be cool to. I don't know. I'm curious where everyone would want Pulte Homes being put in and whatnot, but yeah. So um, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's curious more about G America type stuff, but um, well, I don't know. Any other thoughts you have?
Um, yeah, I don't know. This is we can kind of talk about whatever we want, but I think that the current housing market is, it's unsustainable for whatever reason, and we're there's both people that need to have a place to live and the central planners are kind of right now in between a rock and a hard place because the value of homes, kind of across the board is so high in areas where people generally want to live. The neighborhood I grew up in, there was sort of some lower cost of living areas and like sort of a downtown block of homes. It was not uncommon to be able to get a home there for $25,000, $30,000. And now those same plots of those same homes now, 20 years later, 25 years later, are selling for 300, 400 grand and being torn down and having, massive new developments built on them, $1 million homes going up, where I grew up. And, that's probably not the same case everywhere, but I think this statement generally holds true that houses are expensive, and uh, the price of housing has greatly outstripped that sort of correlational need for a person's ability to purchase that home, right? Like our incomes have not adjusted to keep rate with the increase in housing prices, you know, and neither have our wages kept up to keep up with the, inflation and increasing cost of goods that you need to, to sustain yourself outside of even thinking about buying a home. So we're at this problem where we're sort of in between this rock and a hard place because the central planners, that it's going to be very bad for them if real estate values plummet too much, because it really is the base layer of collateral within our monetary system. Like money is created by debt. A huge percentage of money is created by people signing mortgages, and if people default on their mortgages, that money is destroyed. It's just a really bad situation to be in. So it's one of these things where the value of homes can't go down and real estate can't go down too much, and we're seeing that right now with like commercial real estate. Like there's some, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something crazy like 1 out of 5. It's like 20% of corporate tenants are no longer paying rent, and like another 20 or 30% have either missed rent payments or they're considering not paying rent. And if we could find those statistics, it would be more specific than the sort of generalization that I'm providing right now. But even though that's the case, these corporate real estate investment trusts, they're not plummeting in value. They're keeping them. There's basically some shady things that market makers are doing, and that sort of these credit rating agencies are doing to keep the value of those assets high, because they can't have it crash. Because if it crashes, they're all of a sudden they're having to foreclose on these properties and try to sell them back into the market. And if they're selling them back into the market, they're increasing the supply. If they're increasing the supply, and there's a demand to offset it, they're going to just, you know, they're just going to tank the own market that they currently have all this debt accumulated in. Their goal is to be receiving passive income through rent payments, um, and their fear is that if they foreclose on people that aren't paying those bills, that's just going to start a spin wheel effect, and that trend will continue, and everybody it just fuels a larger crash. So that's sort of the position that central planners are in. Whereas the position that we're in is everything is just getting so darn expensive. People can't afford to live like
Yeah.
the lives that they want to be able to live. So then the question becomes, how do you distribute the economic purchase? How do you distribute the purchasing power to people so that they can then afford to buy these incredibly expensive homes? And by keeping the expensive homes at the price that they're at, it prevents total systemic failure within our financial system. And I don't know, but you know my preferred mechanism for that distribution of purchasing power would be through a MOASS type event, sort of taking money out of the coffers, out of the ivory towers in New York, Chicago, Singapore, and the like, and distributing that across, a network of hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and having them be able to have an impact in their communities and sort of support by buying local, helping out those around them, invigorating the economy, and uh, potentially having the MOASS. It's likely going to be painful for people that don't hold a position and aren't able to benefit from that transfer of wealth initially, because that money has to come from somewhere. And I think where it's going to come from is from, the SPY, from blue chip stocks, from real estate. It's going to be, I think it's going to be the thing that pops the everything bubble. And we're the recipients of that initial outburst, but things will level out, and wealth will be more. It definitely won't be evenly distributed, but it'll be more evenly distributed than it is today. And that's my hope.
That made me think, like, if, I think there is kind of a decoupling because of technology with the commercial real estate and just the regular housing market. And I think that because if after MOAS, it's not like a lot of us are probably going to be buying a bunch of commercial real estate, especially at the prices that they're at. Um, yeah, that's kind of a. I think you're onto something with the idea of like a longer term loans being how
I,
they're going to preserve that.
it's just the continuation of a trend that's been in place for 70 years.
But I like hadn't have thought of that. I think that's like I imagine that being a thing, and huh, that. But I also think, yeah. So I mean, hmm. Yeah, I think with the one day delivery and better housing development planning and whatnot, that I don't know, probably, like, I mean, I think about just like my life, right? Like my wife and I, after MOAS, we want to build a really legit camper van and just travel around and stuff. So I mean, like, because as of right now, like the idea of owning a house is like kind of unfathomable. Like it's just so expensive, like you're saying. And I guess the only way they could make that more appealing is to do a longer term loan and then let people,
You have to do a
yeah,
longer term loan. There would have to be subsidized interest rates, because if you do the math and create the amortization schedule, like anything above like 7 or 8% interest, the difference in monthly cost on a 30-year versus a 40-year term is it's almost nothing. There's almost no difference in the cost between the two notes. Just one has an extra 10 years on it.
yeah,
So in order for the longer term loan to make sense, if interest, I think interest rates are going to stay higher for longer,
me
at
too.
least in sort of a market driven, not really market driven, but on less regulated um, credit markets. Whereas with the housing market, it's over regulated, is my opinion, and I think that they're going to leverage that over regulation to say, like, okay, yeah, we're in a 7, 8, 9, 10% federal funds rate for general access to credit. However, if you meet certain home buying criteria, you'll be eligible for a 40 or a 50-year loan, but at a 3% interest rate instead of what the market is saying at 10. I could see something like that happen.
That's where the social credit score is going to come in.
And what's funny is, I mean, as much as I
Oh,
don't
crap.
want to see the central bank issued digital currency be something that we are having to use. Back in 2021, really, and before the super stonk days, I was in GameStop at the time. I sort of held it all the way up and all the way down, and just kept buying more. But I sort of said to myself that I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see MOASS until there is a central bank issued digital currency, because it's just a way of sort of shackling those funds up, where it doesn't matter if you've got $1 billion in your brokerage account, if you can only act if a central bank can come in and audit all your purchases and tell you what you're able to buy and where you're able to go. So,
Do
sort
you
of a
know much
cynical take.
about loop ring?
A fair bit. I mean, I'm not a like a data scientist, but I have quite a bit of loop ring, and I've held it for some time.
Like it's just I realized just recently that it's actually a company out of Shanghai, which was like kind of interesting. And I was like, if there was a bunch of money being, switched from moved from the Nasdaq and the NYSE to like loop ring, like I don't know that the US would be okay with that. I don't know how that all works.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I don't know that it's because the I guess the money that would be going to loop ring would be divided by the total amount of tokens on the loop ring, like how many loop ring tokens there are on the blockchain, and
Mhm.
then like sort of, if there's, I don't know, let's say there's a billion loop ring tokens. I'm not exactly sure how many there are. If there's $1 billion market cap of loop ring, each of those tokens is worth $1, but then that value is distributed across all of the wallet addresses for people that hold loop ring. But so it's not like it's just going to like a it's not going to like the balance sheet of a company that is domiciled out of Shanghai. It's like that's where the company that built and maintains the infrastructure for that technology may be based out of, but the value isn't necessarily directly attributed with their business. It's just, they may be early investors and long-term believers in the platform, and therefore may have a bunch of tokens that they're holding on to themselves. And if there is a drastic increase in the market capitalization of the protocol, then they would stand to benefit proportional to their previous holdings. But it's not like we'd be ripping out the Nasdaq and replacing it with a technology company in Shanghai.
I mean, I mean, they'd be the ones in control of the code that is managing it, so
Yeah,
it
that's
would, in
true.
a
I
sense, kind
don't
of.
do they. I think don't they, do they not have DAO plans for like
I'm not
community?
sure. I'm actually not definitely not a crypto expert.
I think they. I haven't been much into cryptocurrency really the past um, 2.5 years or so, since I've sort of been in crypto since like 2017 ish, and it was like my sole financial focus up until uh, probably 2020. And then I started being like, oh, like stocks are cool too. And then
Yeah.
I learned how to play options, and now options plays is most of what I think about, because it's just, options are so fascinating to me. But so because of that, I haven't been paying as close attention to all the crypto stuff. But a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization that uses it basically does it facilitates token based voting for what happens relative to the protocol that the token holders are participants within. So I believe Loopring has plans to institute a DAO. So that would mean that those with an economic interest, or I guess their however many tokens that they have in the protocol divided by the total amount of tokens on the protocol, determines the the weight of their voice when the community puts a vote out for what's going to change. So I believe that they have plans for that. So it's not necessarily that there would be all this externalized and centralized control within another nation over what happens on the protocol, unless they have a majority, the citizens of whatever country amongst, across themselves, or just different corporations within that country, hold enough tokens already to be able to influence all future protocol developments.
I mean, I was just thinking that Bed Bath would probably be I don't know if it'd be the first one to kind of move over. Just like, Teddy, the first way of them testing all their new delivery methods is through just the Teddy books, you know, seeing how
We love
fast they can
Teddy.
get shipping going and everything. So,
We love Teddy here, and appreciate the shout out Watt DC in the chat. I appreciate that. But yeah,
sweet.
loopring is fascinating. I love the idea of how it's just a layer two protocol that makes Ethereum run more efficiently. So really, there's this sort of triangular problem in decentralized computing and blockchain and cryptocurrency. That is, if you're going to for people that want to build a blockchain network or distributed computing protocol, there's three key problems that need to be solved for: security, scalability, and decentralization. And the rule is generally you have to pick two.
Hmm.
You can't do you can only pick two to do really well, and something has to suffer. So Bitcoin, for example, is highly secure. It is highly decentralized, but it's not scalable. It's very expensive to facilitate transactions. Ethereum, on the other hand, it's very secure. It's very decentralized. It has a similar. It's more scalable than Bitcoin is, but for the type of work that Ethereum is trying to do, where it's trying to facilitate smart contracts, and the more adoption it gets, the more smart contracts that are on it. Like a Bitcoin transaction is just a single transaction. There's no smart contract associated with it. It's just that it's just a ledger recording of uh, energy or funds moving from one wallet address to another. But whereas on Ethereum, it's much more scalable than Bitcoin, but it's also trying to do so much more. So instead of it being just we're moving this asset from here to here, it's there is it basically facilitates, a smart contract is basically a handshake agreement, and in that handshake, each party has a set of conditions that they are trying to achieve by facilitating that handshake, and there can be infinite complexity that's built into that program. And so all of that complexity within the handshake requires additional transactions that happen on the chain. So a single smart contract execution can be incredibly computationally resource intensive. So even though it's more scalable than Bitcoin, it still has that scalability problem. But with Loopring sitting on top of it as layer two, what I really like about Loopring is that it's able to inherently benefit from the native properties of Ethereum, from its secure and decentralized components. And then instead of the Ethereum developers having to be presented with a problem in which they have to continue to continue with the protocol as is at being decentralized and secure, but having to try to optimize for scalability on the base layer, Loopring just comes in and says, we're going to benefit from the native components, the structural integrity of Ethereum's security and decentralized attributes. And then on this next layer up, we're going to focus purely on scalability. And and the way that they're doing it, there's other layer two protocols like Polygon, Avalanche, to name a few. There's a ton more, but the way that all these other protocols that I've seen, the way that they solve the problem of scalability is not by building directly on top of Ethereum, but rather building adjacent to it, which requires them to have their own security for the product to guarantee the security of what happens on their chain, which can lead to vulnerabilities because they're not able to benefit from all of that's been accumulated on the Ethereum blockchain. So that's why I like Loopring, is it's bolted on top of and natively benefits from what happens at the base layer, and then and it is a pure solution for solving for the inherent inefficiency that it has because of that problem, in which to build a decentralized computing system, there's three things you need to solve for, and it's very, very difficult to solve for all three of them. So
I think
that's
that's
where
why the CBDC will probably be through PayPal's new stablecoin, just because I highly doubt the government would even know where how to start about regulating, like, or even like even just the security aspect of crypto.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of tinfoil on PayPal. Even just in terms of personnel, I don't know the gentleman's name or his exact title, but there's a former. It's either a former executive at PayPal is now working at the Federal Reserve, or vice versa. But yeah, and the Federal Reserve itself is a private entity, so it would not break the mold at all if in the issuance of a CBDC that responsibility were to be uh, managed by a private company. It's just kind of the way it already works. Just the technology, you know, the existing monetary system we have is using technology that's 100 years old.
Yeah. Someone just said, Ethereum has already changed their so-called code is law. And I don't know. For me, I think that's kind of the problem with even just one. I don't know. Like anytime you narrow it down to just one, either one cryptocurrency, one currency, like then there's just one target for everyone to try to exploit that.
Yeah, I'm not saying Ethereum is perfect. It's just the biggest one
Oh,
right now.
I
It's
wasn't dissing on it either. I was just like when I was thinking about the CBDC, I'm like, I feel like if so much of the whole world is kind of pegged to the US dollar, that once it was on the blockchain, I just feel like there'd be people all day, every day trying to hack it. And what are the odds that someone, successfully does it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Yeah. Well, I guess as far as Pulte Homes, buying homes, any more thoughts before we maybe close up?
No, love the company. If post MOASS, I would definitely consider getting one for myself, maybe in a couple different places across the country and areas where I'd want to be. But um, no, I'm very encouraged by Pulte's presence within our community. I think it's incredibly bias confirming, and I'm just jacked going into this next week, looking to pick up a few more shares. Pick up a few more shares this week. That'll be a good time.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm really excited for just the whole general movement. I mean, the idea of Pulte wanting to be involved with his investors and with clients and delighting customers. Like I don't know, I'm excited to see what this like if this trend, because MOAS could propel all of those people in that group of people that are trying to delight customers into a position of power. So,
Amen to
well,
that.
thanks for
Let's pray that it happens.
yeah, seriously. Well, thanks for coming on, helping me out. This is fun, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely appreciate the invite, Michael.
Uh,
Good to see the community chiming in today, and we'll see Michael. Will see you this week on the PP show. Looking forward to tuning in, maybe hopping on.
all right, sounds good. See you, man.